One of the fun things about moving from the UK to the US is talking to US friends about the differences between UK and US children's television when I was growing up in the 80s. Now, I should probably preface this with the fact that my family didn't have a colour TV until the mid-80s, mid to late 80s. We didn't have a VCR until the 1990s. And my parents didn't buy their first computer until I was at music college in 1998. And then it was only so that they could communicate with me. So my family's not necessarily been forward in adopting new technologies. However, I did have terrestrial TV, and I watched a little bit of it. I spent between 2 and 4 hours most days practicing music, so I didn't have a whole lot of spare time to watch TV. But when I did, I enjoyed some great UK TV shows. And while, how do I put this? 1980s kids' TV stars have since been discovered to not necessarily been the best role models. I mean, Rolf Harris, Jimmy Savile, and there were others. Some of my favourite TV shows were factually based. So I was an avid Blue Peter watcher. I had all of the Blue Peter badges except the gold one. I loved watching factual nature shows on TV. And I liked a show called Record Breakers with the late Roy Castle, who, by the way, was one of the first people to be diagnosed with cancer, lung cancer, from secondary smoke. He didn't actually smoke himself. He was a trumpet player and used to play a lot in bars where there was a lot of smoky atmosphere, and unfortunately he contracted lung cancer and died of that. But when he was still alive, he used to do a TV show called Record Breakers, and it was focused on how these wonderful records had been broken around the world and in the UK, sometimes in the studio, on camera, sometimes even live. I used to love watching it because it showed the extent to how people could push themselves to their absolute limits, how they could go above and beyond what was considered normal. So when a series of new range records started to be broken in the last month or so, and I heard about them, you might think that I was really excited to hear about new EV range records set and how production vehicles are pushed to their absolute limits. And in some ways I was. But I think there's a conversation we need to have about range records, because I don't think everyone understands that they are not representations of what a vehicle can achieve in everyday driving, but what they can achieve in extreme circumstances. So today I'm going to attempt my own record. I'm going to get this car to show the equivalent of about 500 miles worth of range, at least on paper, when driven really carefully. And we're going to have a chat about where we should put range records, how we should treat them, and why we need to also be ready to call out automakers when they claim those range records for marketing. Because that's really what it's about. Marketing. Ready to be a record breaker?
If you want to be the best, if you want to be the best, dedication.
There have been a lot of range records in the last month or so, and every automaker seems to be using those range records as a way to advertise how awesome their vehicles are, rather than be a celebration of the person driving the vehicle. The headlines always celebrate the vehicle, its battery pack capacity, and how much further than the official estimated range each of the vehicles has managed to travel. On paper, that might sound fine and dandy, but let's not forget, just like most of us can't run a 10-second 100-meter sprint, the actual skill behind these quote-unquote records is the person behind the wheel. let's start with the first one. So there was a Lucid Air sedan that managed to go 596 miles on a single charge. Shortly after the Lucid Air range record, then a team of engineers at GM did a range record with the Chevrolet EV work truck in max range variant, and they did 1,059 point something miles on a single charge, which is more than double that truck's real world rated range. And then just last week, a team of guys in the UK managed to set a new range record in a Polestar 3. They covered 381.34, I can't remember the exact figure, miles in a single charge in about 22 hours using a bevy of techniques to eke out the range. Now, I should point out, all of these 3 range tests were on the public highway, much like this real-world range test snippet is being carried out on the public highway. Now, I've managed to cover just about 5 miles, and according to my Chevrolet Bolt EV, my average fuel economy since I started this and reset the odometer is about 43.4 miles per kilowatt hour. Now, the EPA range of this Chevrolet Bolt EV is 250 miles. On a good day, I can maybe get maybe 4.5 miles per kilowatt hour. I know people who can regularly get more than 5 miles per kilowatt hour. But as you can see, I have just had to basically turn this vehicle into drive mode, and look, immediately the fuel economy drops like a stone. And that's kind of my point. It's possible to set up a range record and to achieve a phenomenal record-breaking distance just by driving a car in a particular way, by choosing a particular route. And in the 5.3 miles that I have driven, for a large portion of that trip, my fuel economy was ridiculously high. But already, it's visibly dropping. Like, I'm now under 25 miles per kilowatt hour. And the point I'm trying to make here is that context is king. The range that you will get from your vehicle is dependent on so much more than the vehicle's battery pack. And let's look at those range record attempts from the last month and discuss some of the things that went right in each case. First, the attempt in Europe with the Lucid Air sedan. The route chosen was a gradual downhill from the mountains down to a lower elevation. There was a noticeable drop in elevation. The second one, the Chevrolet Silverado EV work truck max range, which by the way is a ridiculously long name, that range attempt covered the distance driven by Chevrolet engineers who, yes, they know how to get the very best range out of that vehicle, but it was also done at an average speed of 25 miles per hour. And just park that. We're going to come back to that a little later on. I also want to discuss the fact that the most recent range test, the one in the UK, was carried out in Norfolk. Now, I'm from Norfolk, for those who don't know. That's my home county. And if I tell you, do you keep a trash and bar, then you'll know that, yes, I am, in fact, from Norfolk. But to use a Norfolk phrase, while I am very proud that the Polestar 3 was able to go an incredible distance in my home county, I think that some of the reporting, how should I put this in a Norfolk phrase? Well, that's a load of squid. See, Norfolk is known for being very flat. And it was chosen specifically for that range test because Norfolk is very flat. Norfolk also doesn't really have a whole lot of high-speed roads. It's one of a handful of counties in the UK that doesn't have a motorway passing through it. And most roads are single or dual carriageways. They don't have particularly high speed limits. And so it's relatively easy to drive in a very efficient manner, like I am right now. The car is pegged at 55 miles per hour. That is the speed limit for the road that I am driving along right now. People are passing me, but I'm doing my darndest to keep this car as smooth and as efficient as possible. And even now, my trip, I'm now under 10 miles per kilowatt hour. And yes, I've covered 7.8 miles. And the fuel economy of my trip is very impressive. But is it enjoyable? Well, I do prefer to drive a little bit more sedately, and so yeah, okay, I don't have a problem with driving at 55 when the speed limit is 55. But it's also requiring a lot of attention from me, right? The feeding the input, making sure that I'm feathering the throttle in just the right way. I apologize, for some reason my instant electric energy economy has not shown up. We did try. But you can see, yeah, we've used 1.04 kilowatt hours for this trip already. Now, interestingly, what the car says on the center console and what the car says on its dashboard seem to be slightly different. I don't know quite why that is, but about a kilowatt hour of electricity to cover what's coming up to 9 miles is pretty good, and that's nothing to be sniffed at. Right now, I am driving at around 20 to 25 miles an hour, which is the average speed of at least 2 of those record attempts. I've chosen a road that has been recently resurfaced, that is smooth, that doesn't have a lot of traffic on it, so I'm not holding people up. And I'm able to maintain a really decent, at least for me, fuel economy. I mean, I've just crossed over 11 miles and I haven't even used 1.3 kilowatt hours of electricity. I'm being smooth, I'm using smooth inputs, I'm stroking the accelerator, I'm not using the brake at all, and I'm doing everything I possibly can to maximize my range. But if I drove like this in the real world, well, at best, I would just upset other road users. At worst, I might cause someone to road rage at me, or in fact, cause the police to stop me. And that brings me to the crux of this video, which is, I have no problem with range tests. I like them. From a nerdy perspective, I think that they are really wonderful because it helps people understand the limits of the vehicle's design, of its battery pack, of its motor, of its power electronics. It helps automakers figure out where tweaks can be made in a vehicle's battery pack and drivetrain and power electronics to eke out every last bit of efficiency. And that's totally fine. The problem I have is that automakers, and to some extent some news outlets, are misrepresenting what these range records are doing as, hey, you should maybe buy this vehicle because it's gone a long way on a single charge. Well, I know that the majority of people who watch this channel are informed and understand that how far you can travel on a single charge is going to be affected by everything from the weather to how properly inflated your tires are, to your skill as a driver, to the terrain that you have to drive across, to how you're feeling that day. I also think that a lot of people don't. And I'm about to explain why. For years, we have got used to cars being advertised by their sprint time and their top speed. And nobody buys a car for its sprint time and its top speed. It might influence you, at least up here, but you don't go out onto the public highway and try and achieve that top speed because the car once did, or an example of it once did, on a closed racetrack. You understand that the maximum capable speed of your vehicle is out of reach for the majority of applications and the majority of users, unless of course you live in Germany and you have access to an autobahn. And so you buy a car with a theoretical top speed of 120 miles per hour, and you're okay with normally only driving it at 70 or 80, depending on where you live and your approach to speed limits. But I think when it comes to range, we're not able to grok it in the same way. Most people don't understand what a kilowatt hour is. You ask most people to define a kilowatt hour, and unless they're spicy, it's just a unit. Some people don't even understand that a kilowatt hour is a unit of energy. They just go, it's a thing that is in my car. And so if you tell them that it's a unit of energy and miles per kilowatt hour is a representation of how quickly you are using that energy, most people don't get it. What they do get is range. And so when you say this car has a range of 250 miles, people go, oh, I understand. It could go 250 miles before I have to stop and recharge it. But we all know that all of those things I previously mentioned, terrain, weather, whether your tires are properly inflated, how healthy your battery pack is, heck, what you had for dinner last night, can all influence how you drive and how efficiently you drive. That doesn't get past it has a range of 250 miles. And that means that if they read a news article or they hear reporting that says the new Chevrolet Silverado EV work truck max range has achieved a new record of 1,000 and however many miles on a single charge, they might go, oh, that can go a really long way. I'm going to buy one of those. Even if, when they get there, the salesperson says, well, the real world range is much less than that, they're still going to go, yeah, but I want to buy that because it achieved that range. No, the vehicle didn't achieve it. Going back to my sprinting example, you don't buy a pair of shoes because a professional athlete who has spent years and years and years training for a particular race managed to run that race in under 10 seconds. You don't then turn around and go, well, I'm going to buy the same shoes that they have because then maybe I will be able to drive that distance. That's ludicrous. So why then would we buy a car because someone managed to eke out that kind of range? Well, because we're easily led by advertising. We're easily led by bigger is better mentality. And look, I've just driven 15.1 miles, and I've used less than 2 kilowatt hours. And that's me not really trying. However, I got an assist. I started off with a 5-mile downhill section, which obviously helped. And I also drove on roads that I knew would be quiet, that I would be able to drive very smoothly and slowly on, and roads that weren't particularly twisty and were generally fairly well maintained. And that allowed me to absolutely stroke the right pedal and get the very best range out of it. Now, the efficiency has dropped down because I've come onto a main drag now, and I have to drive a little bit faster, and I have to make sure that I'm not a hindrance to the other road users. But at 8.5 miles per kilowatt hour, my little Chevrolet Bolt EV has a theoretical range of around 520 miles. That's more than double the EPA range for this vehicle. Am I a professional energy efficiency expert? No. I'm sure that an official energy efficiency expert could probably get 10 miles per kilowatt hour out of this vehicle. Would most people want to be a passenger with me right now in this vehicle? No. No, they would not. I'm back to driving at 25 miles an hour. And it's not a real world range. It's a stunt. For this video, I might add, but it's still a stunt. This car has got over 130,000 miles on it. It's still possible to do this kind of distance. You just have to be really gentle. Alright, someone is behind me, so I'm gonna call my range test now. I'm gonna go back up the hill that I drove at the start of this video, and I'm gonna show you the difference in energy efficiency. Alright, I'm now doing 47 miles an hour, which is a perfectly normal speed for this road, and my energy efficiency has already dropped to 7.4 miles per kilowatt hour. As I go up this hill, it will get lower and lower, and I probably will arrive back at my starting point with an energy efficiency of about 5, maybe 6 miles per kilowatt hour. It will probably be less though. You might now be watching this and think that I am against range tests. And the answer is no, I'm not against range tests. I'm not even against record attempts, where you go through some pretty extreme conditioning of yourself and the vehicle, you turn off the air conditioning and you drive it in a very particular, prescribed way. But at the same point, that is not how we drive in the real world. And so, while I think that range tests can be useful, and while I think that record attempts can be useful to see where the limits of a vehicle lie, I want more range tests to include things like this hill that I'm driving up right now. It really does impact the range, the real world range of a vehicle. And the problem is that right now we are seeing a huge number of people jumping onto forums and saying, I just bought this car, it doesn't get the range that I thought it would. Is it broken? And the answer is always no. It's just that your daily driving, your driving style, or something else about your experience behind the wheel means that you are using more energy than a car on a rolling road in a laboratory with an extrapolated range rating. Because that's how EPA and most other agencies rate vehicles. They don't take a car out and drive it until it's empty and then record however many miles or kilometers it did. The car is inside a laboratory because it's impossible to drive a route that is representative of every single customer's real world driving duties. Not everyone lives in the mountains. My daily driving always starts with 5 to 10 miles of really impressive fuel economy. And it always ends with really terrible fuel economy. And in fact, when I was riding the Vectrex VX1 Maxi scooter, and I sometimes got my range predictions wrong, and it had a battery pack that was, 10 plus years old and very, very tired and couldn't hold a lot of energy, there were moments where I miscalculated and I would hit the town near to where I live, and the bike said, I've got 30 miles of range remaining, and then I'd drive up into the mountains back to my home and I'd be completely out. And that's the point I need to make here. Range tests and record attempts are amazing as long as we remember the context. The context being they're usually not driven on roads that mimic our everyday driving experience. They don't necessarily mimic anyone's driving experience, and they are optimized in a way that shows the very best of a marriage between a human who really understands hypermiling techniques and a car company that has made a vehicle that can be hypermiled to the extreme. But at the end of the day, records are just a piece of paper. We need to focus on what the vehicle offers us, how much energy it uses on our daily commute, and most importantly, if it suits our needs and our budget. Nobody needs a massive, long-range pickup truck to do a daily commute of 50 miles. Nobody needs an EV that can do 900 miles on a charge if they're only ever driving it to the shops and back. And that's not to say that buying a vehicle based on those range records is wrong. It's just, we need to remind ourselves that what is possible is not always what is achievable by the individual, and be okay with that. I hope that if you are into running, you don't stop running because you can't run a 10-second or faster 100-meter dash. I hope that you watch someone who can and go, I want to learn how that person did that and improve myself. And if there's anything that these record attempts can show us, it's that we can all become better, more efficient drivers. And as I predicted, 5.8 miles per kilowatt hour, 20 miles in 3.5 kilowatt hours, which means this car is going to be full again in about half an hour. I reckon that's pretty good.
Thanks for joining me today, and if you've got thoughts, make sure you leave them in our Discord chat room, on our Patreon page, down below, on our blog, or you can reach out to us on Mastodon or Blue Sky. Thanks to the amazing list of people scrolling by on your screen right now. They are part of the massive community of supporters who make this channel possible, helping us through Patreon and YouTube, covering our bills, paying our team, and helping us to remain 100% independent. If you'd like to join them and see your name listed here, just follow the link below. We've got options available across a wide range of different price points from just $1.50 US a month. A massive welcome to our newest supporters: M. Wessy, Les Magnar, MX Flounder, NYTMR, Thrill Nelly, Hernan Giraldo, Christopher Bloodworth, Eric Rouvier, Ronnie E. Bickers Jr., Brett Mason, George Piney, Mega XLR, Robert Coghill, Peter Bodica, Gary Wood, Dessa Bird Traveller, Tim van der Loeng, Mike Clark, Kyle Olin, Rob Hutchinson, Tony Ladig, Chris Nichols, Tempest, Adrian Atwater, Doug Lloyd, Mitch Rasner, and Brad. To join the list and get your shout out, become a paid Patreon member for your moment of fame, and you can even gift membership to someone else. If you'd like to support us with a one-off donation, you'll find links below to make Ko-fi and Bitcoin donations, and we even have an old-fashioned PO box you can reach us at. Address on our website. You'll also find links to our swag store, and if you're someone who has to shop on Amazon, please consider using our affiliate link so we get the commission, not Jeff Bezos. So we can continue to focus on making our content even better and reduce burnouts, we are being a little freer with our release days, but plan on dropping new content every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday on our main channel, plus something on Sunday over on TE Take 2. If you want more, the mighty almighty algorithm that hates us thinks you should be watching this video, but we think this one is one you should also check out. Be awesome, be kind, be intentional, and don't forget to resist. Keep evolving.